Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here.
And this is Becky.
And so it begins.
Yes.
All the launches happened last month, and now the new rumors are showing up on the internet. So this one is about Z35 1.2 S-line. Apparently, Nikon France mentioned it on their social media in French.
Whoopsie.
How's your French, Becky?
Not great, to be honest, but I think we can have a look at some Google Translate here. So is this a typo? What is it? It was on their social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and it says several astrophotography photos taken with an upcoming NIKKOR Z35 1.2 S-line lens. Now,
Is it a typo? Is it not? Apparently, they've corrected it on both Instagram and Facebook posts. But if you look at the translated version of the Instagram post, he said that the Astro image that is shown on there, it's composed out of 3x3 photos I took with the Nikon Z8 1.2 and the Nikon Z35 1.2 lenses. I've been working with the Star Trek, and thanks to the combination of the aperture of 1.2 and long exposure times, I was able to make elements of the Milky Way visible and not visible to the naked eye.
that sounds like a little faux pas, if you ask me.
I mean, when you say that thanks to the aperture 1.2,
Yeah, I know. So they've changed it to 35 1.8 now. If they'd removed that lens altogether, if they just said no mention of 35, I would have thought maybe it wasn't a typo and that actually just a little something slipped through the NDA net there. But as they've changed it to 35 1.8, I suppose the only real way to know is to look at the EXIF data. Maybe we could start a little poll on his Instagram page and say, show us your EXIF data.
show us the receipts. Well, I think personally, and again, it's a speculation on this stage. I personally think that he has 35 1.2. It makes sense for astrophotographers to have 1.2 lenses.
Sure.
And obviously, combination of 1.2 aperture would allow you to take great shots, something like this. Doesn't mean you can't take it with 1.8, but it does seem to me if the lens is going to be out this year, then it does make sense for Nikon to give this lens to photographers to test and get some feedback before launching it into the world.
So shall we go and find Bastian_M_Nightscapes and see what he's got in his kit bag?
Yeah.
That's the only way we can
find them
find
somewhere in France.
But I do like the fact that Nikon commented in reply, simple error. That's how I understand.
It happens. I mean, honestly, this is probably the best way to downplay it. It could be a typo, it could be not, but I want to hear from you, people on the internet. Do tell us in the comments below, do you think Nikon is just not good at typing things, or do you think it's all a part of the plan?
Oh dear. All right, moving on. We have photons.
Photons?
Photons.
Yeah.
That's a posh way to say photons. PhotonsToPhotos released a photographic dynamic range and other sensor measurements of the Nikon Z8.
All right, so what I thought we're going to do is we're going to put all 45 megapixel sensors produced by Nikon.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like that's the only thing we're going to do now. So we're all going to have full frame cameras, 45 megapixels. Who is with me?
I mean, there are 5 of them. It's a lot of cameras.
It is a lot of cameras. And
resolution.
then we're going to just release Z6 Mark III and Z7 Mark III with 45 megapixel sensors.
Excellent.
Just like DX cameras with 20. But if you look at them, they look quite similar, and dynamic range pretty good. What's interesting to me is actually the Z9 dynamic range is very interesting. So it seems like it's having a dual ISO where it's kind of dynamic range jumps from about 640 ISO to about 800 ISO, and you see quite a good improvement there. But the rest of the cameras do behave quite similarly. From the numbers that they've posted, it seems that Z7 Mark II is still the best in terms of dynamic range, but I think for the real world results, the difference will be quite negligible.
Cool. Good. Next up, the Nikon Z8 was the best-selling camera in all 5 major stores in Japan in May, believe it or not. It doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
FileWeb published the top 5 best-selling camera rankings from 5 big players in Japan. So it's Yodobashi camera, Big Camera, Kitamura, Map camera that we talked about before, and Fuji camera. So what's interesting to me that in May, that Z8 was a clear leader, but then in some stores, like Map camera and Fuji camera, Z9 was in a second place, which means that after all this time, year and a half or so, since it's been released, it's still one of the best-selling cameras for those dealers, which tells us a lot about how good that camera is.
It does. And I'm glad to see that the Z9 is holding its own. And I think that also, although this is stats from May, I think that the firmware update will kind of reinforce its position in future months as well.
Do you think they generally will get a spike every time the major upgrade is released? So let's say when we went from version 1 to version 2, there was a huge video update. And then version 3 had quite a bit of things. And recently version 4 with all the auto capture things that we've got. So do you think that it brings people back to the camera and it's one way to not to update the hardware, but still increase the sales?
I think so. I think if there are features that specific types of photographer are looking for, and Nikon then release an update that says this is the only camera that has that feature, that will drive people towards that model. It makes a lot of sense and is a very smart move on the part of Nikon. So I hope that it continues. I do like the idea. Obviously, we love new cameras. We always want new cameras. But I do like the idea of people who have already put all their beans in one pot and have spent the money with Nikon to have their product constantly added value to.
Yeah, I mean, from one point when we were saying that some people say I was better tester for certain things, and now they released the new model, so I have to buy that one in order to get the good things. It seems like that Z9 is actually just kept on giving from, well, year to year, let's say, you know, and we still see an improvement path for Z9 and Z8. So Z9 should get all the Z8 features like vehicle recognition and stuff. And obviously Z8 potentially will get auto capture, which we discussed last week, if it's going to get it or not. So, but there are definitely things we see that they can still include those softwares. And I personally want to see Tetris or Snake installed via firmware update, because on those long flights, instead of chimping into the thousands of images I've taken of a flying crane, I could actually be the world record in Tetris.
When I had a Nokia 3310 back in the day, I had Snake running and I must have fallen asleep one night with it still going. And I woke up in the morning and the Snake was still running across the screen.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show how sturdy the batteries on the 3310 were, because it ran all night. If I had my iPhone on all night, that battery would be depleted.
What you're saying is battery of Nokia 3310 is better than EN-EL18D battery of Nikon Z9.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Pure logic.
Yeah, absolutely.
If someone writes a comment about this,
you're fired.
Insta-ban, okay? So let's move on to other things. So Nikon Support published an article which is called Close-Up Shooting with a Nikon Z70-180 lens. Now, 70-180 lens that came out a few weeks ago, it was a cheaper alternative to a superior 70-22.8. However, it had its advantage over close-up focusing, and paired with a 2x teleconverter, it would give you even a higher magnification of 0.96. Now, Nikon Support came out with an article, and it has quite a few twists in there.
Some twists and turns for you close-up shooters. So Nikon have said the 70-180 we're talking about here, f2.8, with a minimum focus distance of 0.27 meters at the maximum wide angle position, so at the 70 end, and 0.85 meters at the telephoto position, 180 mil. This lens supports autofocusing for close-up photography with a maximum reproduction ratio of approximately 0.48 times. It also supports the use of teleconverters. When the 2x teleconverter is used, the maximum reproduction ratio increases to nearly life size at approximately 0.96 times. Now, there are some caveats, yes. However, if you're considering purchasing this lens, please be aware of the following regarding close-up shooting. So, when focusing, whether auto or manual, on a flat object at the center of the frame, so you're focusing in the center of the frame, stay with me, at or near the minimum focusing distance. So let's say you're shooting a flat object, you're at the closest focusing distance at the 70 millimeter end of the lens. The edges of the image captured at the wide angle position, 70 mil, will be distorted or elongated. They say blurred.
Soft corners, basically.
Soft corners, exactly. And they even in the article give an explanation and some demonstrations of how that looks. So if you're shooting wide open, f2.8 at 70 mil, at the closest focusing distance, focusing on the center of the frame, then your edges are going to be soft. Conversely, If you are doing same parameters, lenses wide open, 70mm, closest focusing distance, and you've got your focus point up in one of the corners, let's say, of the frame, then the center is going to be blurry. They're telling you this before you buy the lens, which I actually really appreciate, rather than waiting for someone to complain about it and then releasing an article. What they do point out is that if you stop down the lens, it will very quickly deal with the issue. Also, if you shoot at a different focal length, so 70mm is where it's exacerbated. If you shoot at a longer focal length, for example, at the 180 end, it's not going to become such an issue. If your subject is not a flat subject, so if you're taking a picture of a flower head or a feature, let's say a bit of architecture, anything like that, it's going to be much less noticeable because you really only notice it if your subject is completely flat. But it's essentially saying that expect some distortion with this lens if you're shooting at the closest focusing distance at 70mm at f2.8. Once you stop it down, it will be fine.
I'm looking even at 70mm, even at stop down to f16, you still get fairly soft corners. Obviously, they're not as soft as wide open at 2.8, but they're still there. So the moral to the story is, really, if you're buying 70-180 for macro photography, then don't shoot at 70mm, shoot on everything else, and ideally on a longer end of things. So shoot at 180, you're going to be fine. Is at 70 where the issue is. But I'm glad that Nikon Support published that article because we didn't know that before. Yep. And obviously, we haven't seen many reviews pointing this out as well. So
the lens is not out yet. So
exactly. So, well, all the influencers, they got some,
influenced us.
Yeah, not us, but the real ones that get the stuff, So, but I'm glad Nikon Support did let us know about this. So, which is an amazing thing. Now, on another news, a few weeks ago, we mentioned Asian market only Nikon filters, which were called Arcrest filters. They were discontinued. At least they were rumored to be discontinued. And then last week, Nikon officially discontinued them. However, they launched a new version of the same filter. So it's a Mark II now. And they didn't only launch a clear filters, they also launched ND filters with the same coatings.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about the Arcrest II protection filter. Since its launch in 2017, the Arcrest II protection filter has achieved extremely high optical performance that makes the most of the lens's inherent descriptive power while maintaining its reliable strength as a lens protection filter. While inheriting the performance of the high performance protection filter, Arcrest protection filter, we have newly adopted an anti-static coating that prevents dust and dirt from adhering as requested by our customers.
Yeah, they also have a R01 coating, which also should improve on things and basically makes the image looks like there's no filter attached. And they do publish some results where showing, well, other brand filters produce a horrible image, and then ours is the best.
Ours is amazing. So this is an ultra low reflective AR coating, which they've added to that. So we've got anti-static coating to stop dust, dirt, etc. And then high performance filter that has almost no effect on the image quality, even when shooting with a higher megapixel digital camera. So those are very fancy filters, I would say.
Yeah. Which are not available in Europe and UK.
Sigh.
Not sure if they're available in the United States. No info yet, but you can order them from Nikon Japan if you like to. So, another bit of news. Nikon launched Environmental Photographer of the Year 2023, and it is now open for entries.
Now in its 16th year, the competition provides an international platform to raise awareness of environmental issues and inspire change. Now, the judging panel invites both professional and amateur photographers from across the world to submit their most poignant, insightful, and eye-opening environmental photography captured on a device of their choice, so it doesn't have to be a Nikon camera. Photographers of all ages are encouraged to share their imagery that celebrates humanity's tenacity and activism while showcasing hopeful solutions for our ever-changing planet. We want hopeful solutions. That's very important, I think. The prize winner will receive £5,000 in cash, as well as an interview in the CIWEM's Environment magazine. They will have visibility across all of WaterBear's social channels and a dedicated feature on Nikon Europe's website.
Do you think they can just bank transfer it instead of giving cash? I mean, it's a pain in the neck to go to the bank to deposit cash nowadays.
It is. Anyway, within the competition, there is also Nikon's Young Photographer of the Year award, which will celebrate the best environmental photography from those aged 21 and under, with the winner receiving a Z series mirrorless camera, Z8, I don't know, and 2 NIKKOR Z lenses of their choice in recognition of their achievement.
Fantastic. Well, you got about 6 days when this podcast comes out to enter and participate in the contest. Now, let's move on to things we don't understand. And this bit of news coming from Nikon Japan. Nikon Japan released a Forestry Pro Mark II J laser rangefinder for forestry and commercial use.
The idea behind this laser rangefinder is for those who obviously deal professionally in the forestry industry, measuring things like trees or parts of the environment, rock faces, etc. Now, it's equipped with 6 measurement modes, an external LCD monitor. It offers a wide range of measurements. It's equipped with hyperread that achieves constant and fast-ranging response regardless of distance. Up to 250 measurement results can be stored in it, and it's got some built-in storage there.
Yeah, 6-time viewfinder with a multi-layer coatings for bright and clear vision. Well, if you're interested in all that, wait till 21st of July where it's going to be officially released, and you're welcome to go to Nikon Japan website to order one.
Jolly good.
Now, on to third-party news. The little brand that we talked on our live stream the other day, OWC, now sells CFExpress Type B memory cards all over the world. We actually got one CFExpress card as well as SD card for us to test. So we're definitely going to share our findings with you whenever we have them. But basically, if you've got a Z8 and Z9 cameras, you need to get a purple range of their cameras, because that one will give you a very fast readings that will give you all the top quality recordings in 8K at highest frame rate possible on those cameras. If you are a user for all other Nikon cameras, but not Z8 and Z9, you can get their blue series of cameras. And if you want to look at the first test, which was done by DC Watch, which is a Japanese tech blog, you can also read that article via Google Translate.
In other third-party news, there is a new Megadap ETZ21 Pro autofocus adapter coming soon between Sony E-mount and Nikon Z. So we did test out the ETZ or ETZ21, which was not the Pro version.
Yeah, so that one was released, about 6 to 12 months ago, and it was pretty good. It retails at $249, but there's a Pro version. What do you think they can include in a Pro version that is going to make it better than the non-Pro version?
Truly, I don't know, but perhaps it's going to be more robust. Maybe it will work with a wider range of Sony lenses. I honestly can't think what else, because what more do you want from an adapter apart from full autofocus?
Absolutely. Well, if you haven't bought one yet, but you're thinking of one, then maybe it's definitely worth waiting for the Pro version to be released, to find out the price and what the difference is between the two, and then decide which one is better for you. But otherwise, I think if you got a original ETZ21, then you probably should be fine. Now, on to other third-party news. Smallrig camera cage that we've just reviewed very recently is finally in stock all over the world, including places like Amazon and
other places where people can buy stuff.
Exactly. So apparently it's available. We reviewed it. We really liked it. We are hoping to review the L plate at some point soon, so we will definitely share our findings with you as soon as possible.
Next up for your reviews, first up we have Z8 Overkill for landscape photography, ? My real world review for landscape photographers by Julian Baird Photography.
All right, if you're into landscape photography, this is definitely a review to check out, a quite detailed view.
Indeed.
Now, Matt Irwin did a comparison of 70-180, 70-200, the S version, the FL version, as well as the G version. So he compared them all, and he combined it in one video for you to look at. So definitely, again, if you want to see what's the difference between newer release lens as well as some older F-mount legends, then definitely check this video out.
Nice. And then we have the Nikon Z8 with the 35 1.2 and 35 1.8 behind the scenes by Julia Trotti.
Another Australian, this time from Sydney. All right, and the last review of this week is ePhotoZine reviewed the 12-28 Power Zoom DX lens, which we are actually reviewing at the moment, and shared their verdict with us.
So they say Nikon seems to be shining bright with their Z lens range, and this has continued unabated with the crop sensor DX range. So the features and handlings are all there, well thought out and operating smoothly. The technical quality is there and is much more than just sharpness. What defects there are, such as flare effects and corner darkening, can be turned to an advantage creatively, turning a lens into an exciting one, full of that hard to define character. Nikon have produced an outstanding lens at a great price, and it deserves to be an editor's choice.
Wow, that's pretty good. So they're giving it editor's choice, citing outstanding central sharpness, excellent edge sharpness, power zoom, weather sealings,
Yeah.
as well as very low chromatic aberrations, distortion, and excellent handling with a fast and accurate autofocus. Pretty good. They cited smooth bokeh, amazing price, and great flare effects, and generally low flare.
That's right. Their only cons are some vignetting, which they say could be used creatively, as with the flare, and that there's no lens hood supplied as standard. But other than that, they've given it 5 out of 5 stars and have given features, performance, and value all 5 out of 5, and handling 4.5 out of 5.
That's pretty good.
It's amazing.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's interesting. In positive, they say generally low flare, and then in negative, they say some flare effects. So go figure. But otherwise, I mean, it sounds like a very good lens. I mean, we are testing it at this moment. We're also comparing it to some F-mount versions. So again, in another couple of hours, we may see a video from us about that.
You will.
Okay, move on to weekend read and watch. The NIKKOR, the 1001 Night, is now at number 86, and they are talking about NIKKOR AI 24mm 2.8.
They are. This is a really comprehensive article on this lens if you're interested. They say in tonight's tale, we'll look at the AI NIKKOR 24 2.8. This lens was released in 1977 as a successor to the NIKKOR N Auto 24 2.8, introduced in tale 14. In just what ways was it better than its predecessor? Well, you should read and find out.
Absolutely. And then we have Richie back. From that time he spent at Somerset House in Photo London. Apparently, he had a bunch of creators who talked about the movement of Nikon Z8 and how they feel about the camera. So they talk about feelings.
So the photographers that are in this interview were actually at the Z8 launch. So we saw them in real life on stage.
They do exist. They're made of flesh and bones.
They are. And they were part of the whole pre-release testing procedure. So I would imagine that they have quite a lot of good things to say.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching us this week.
Yes, thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast platform, we'd hugely appreciate a follow, a rating, a review. It all helps massively.
Have you heard of Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Amazon Unlimited? Our podcast is there, as well as other great places for podcast platforms. So do check us out. Leave us a review there. We are growing just like a movement.
And if you'd like to find us on the internet, we occasionally post pictures on Instagram. I'm at Rebecca_Danese. The shop is at Nikon at Grays.
And I'm at Konstantin Kochkin. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.